Welcome, everyone, to the Hillsborough Township Planning Board meeting of May 4th, 2023. Please join me in a salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, that's it. Please be advised this meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, otherwise known as the Sunshine Law. Notice of the 2023 annual meeting schedule has been provided to the officially designated newspapers. Township clerk posted here, or posted on the township's website and available here at the Hillsborough Township Municipal Complex. In addition, application documents have been made available on the Township Civic Clerk website, and complete application files are on file and available in the Planning and Zoning Department for inspection in accordance with the public meeting notice. With that, may I have a roll call of board members and also board and township professionals, please?
Mr. Delcor and Mr. Hestag are currently absent. Mr. Peason?
Here.
Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Radowitz? Yes. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ciccarelli?
Here.
Mayor Labani?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian? Here. Chair Saraji?
Here.
Mr. Coys?
Here.
Okay.
Here.
Mr. Bernstein? Here. And me and the auditor here.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. We do not have consideration of meeting minutes nor resolutions. We do not have planning board business, so we will go to business from the floor for matters not on the agenda. Again, just a reminder, no comments directly or indirectly involving warehousing, because we're going to be talking about that at great extent, and it could impact the application itself. And also, it's a limit of 5 minutes, so if anyone would like to come up to the podium, please come up, state your name and address for the record. I see no comments, so we're going to move on. Consideration of ordinances. Ordinance 2023-05, an ordinance amending Chapter 188, Land Use and Development, Article 1, titled Purpose Definition, Section 188-3, words and terms defined in Article 4, Design and Performance Standards, Section 188-83, sign design standards criteria of the code of the Township of Hillsborough, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey. Mr. Coyce.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Planning Board. As stated in my April 11, 2023 memo, the Hillsborough Development Regulations Ordinance prohibits commercial billboards. However, there are existing static billboards that predate Hillsborough's land use regulations. In recent years, advancements have been made in the field of digital billboards, and the state of New Jersey, through the New Jersey Department of Transportation, now regulates them on Route 206, requiring an outdoor advertising permit with requirements pursuant to the statute. This ordinance would provide standards for a pre-existing non-conforming static billboard on Route 206 to be replaced with a digital billboard. As a result of the ordinance, if adopted, the total number of pre-existing non-conforming billboards would be reduced, thereby reducing cluttered signage in the township. The ordinance lays out essentially how a billboard could be modernized, and it has very specific standards for how you would do that. So,
Thank you, and just want to let the record reflect that Mr. Delcor arrived at 7:10. Okay. So thank you, David. So, is there any comments, questions from the dais? Okay. We don't need to go out, right? Okay. So it doesn't seem like any questions, comments. So I guess the next would be a resolution to move it to the Township Committee for adoption as is. Waiting for a motion.
I'll make that
There
motion.
you go. Mayor made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Wagner, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Peason?
Yes.
Mr. Delcor?
Abstain.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz? Yes. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Committeeman Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Mayor Labani?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Saraji?
Yes. And just so for those that, we did not actually modify it or revise that ordinance. We just merely made a recommendation to the Township Committee to do that. And only the governing body can actually pass ordinances or make revisions to them. So, okay, with that, we're going to move to this evening's applications. First one up is County of Somerset, filed 23-PB-01-SV, Block 169, Lot 56, otherwise known as 510 Long Hill Road. The applicant seeking minor subdivision approval and a C-bulk variances and waivers to subdivide approximately 13.889 acres into two lots. Proposed lot 56.01, which would be 5.889 acres, to retain the existing single-family dwelling, accessory building, and improvements, and then a proposed lot 56.08 of 8 acres to be purchased by the county as part of the preserved open space and passive park land of the Sauerland Preserve on the property, which is in the Mountain Conservation District. And with that,
Okay.
the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Sarah Fitzpatrick. I'm an attorney for Somerset County, and I'm bringing this application before the board. I wanted to start with an overview. You kind of summed up the basic points, so I'll just go over it briefly. Again, the property is at 150 Long Hill Road, Block 169, Lot 56, in the MZ Mountain Conservation Zone District. The stated purpose of which is to preserve and protect the fragile ecosystem and preserve the rural character of the Sauerland Mountain, which is what we're intending to try to accomplish here. The purpose of this application is to subdivide the property into two lots in order to preserve 8 acres as county-owned open space. As you noted, the lot is currently plus or minus 13.889 acres and is improved with a single-family home. It has approximately 259 feet of frontage on Long Hill Road and is approximately 2,373 feet deep. The County of Somerset is under contract to purchase the 8 acres in the rear portion of the property as open space to be added to the county's preserved land in the Sauerland Preserve. We're seeking minor subdivision approval. There is no new development proposed in this application. We do need bulk C variances. We're seeking to create lot 5601 and 5602. 5601 will be 5.889 acres and contain the existing improvements. 5602 will be the 8 acres of open space. I'll just briefly go over the variances that we're requesting tonight. For 5601, again, with maintaining the existing home, we need a variance for minimum lot area where 15 acres is required, and we are proposing 5.889. And for side yard setback for an accessory structure where 20 feet are required, and we're proposing 7.9. Also, with the existing home, there are 2 pre-existing non-conforming conditions. Front yard setback, 150 feet required. 112.6 are existing, but with the right-of-way dedication that Hillsborough has asked for, it will end up being 99.6 feet. And side yard setback to the structure, 50 feet is required and 38.9 is currently present. For our new lot, 5602, which will be the county's open space, minimum lot area, 15 acres, we're proposing 8, and lot frontage, 250 feet along a street is required, and we're proposing 0. So I have one witness tonight, but before I call him, I thought I'd quickly go over the 2 professionals' letters regarding the applications, just to give you a background of what the comments were made. So for the April 25th letter by the board's engineer, the certain comments, one of the comments, the engineer noted that the impervious coverage on lot 5601 with the improvements will increase. Currently, it's 1.2% because it includes those 8 acres. It's going to increase to 2.9%, but the engineer did note that 5% is permitted, so there's no variance required. The engineer asked how the county will be recording the subdivision by plat or deed. And the county will be doing a right-of-way deed and a subdivision deed, so it'll be by deed. We do have a minor existing driveway encroachment at the northeast corner of the property, right at Long Hill Road, that has been raised by both of your professionals. The homeowners informed us that this driveway was there 37 years ago when he bought the property. He's had no problems with his neighbor. There's no formal agreement in place, but there's never been a problem. And we would even suggest that a prescriptive easement was created after 20 years. But be that as it may, we feel like it would be a hardship on the owner to require him to dig up his asphalt driveway for these minor encroachments. So we're hoping that the board will not ask him to do that. If the board wants, we can try to get an easement agreement from the adjacent neighbor. The county's willing to do that as a condition of approval. We don't know if we'll be successful. And then our lot, 5602, does not have any road frontage. But I would mention that it is adjacent to other county-owned preserved land, which does have road frontage in the area. Okay, and then with the letter from your planner, the planner asked when the property would be joined with the rest of the county's preserved properties. Once the county gets ownership of these 8 acres, it will become part of the preserved land. Your planner mentioned the same driveway encroachment. The planner has requested that 13.5 feet of right-of-way be dedicated to the township, which the applicant is willing to agree to. There was one other variance noted in the zoning analysis. The planner identified a variance under municipal land use law, section 35, because lot 5602 does not abut a street, but we don't believe that this variance is necessary because the section provides that no permit for the erection of any building or structure shall be issued unless the lot abuts a street. And there's no development proposed for this application. And it will, by the way, it will stay in its natural state. At some point, the county may put some walking trails, but that's not the plan at the moment. So we have one witness. I have one witness tonight. Mr. Tom Bocchino is the supervising preservation planner for the Somerset County Office of Planning, Policy, and Economic Development, and he's also in charge of the county's open space acquisition program. Mr. Bocchino is also a licensed professional planner, and he'll be testifying with regard to the positive and negative criteria for the variances.
Okay.
So
we
if-
can swear him in.
Yes. You swear any testimony you give tonight is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And for the record, can you spell your name and use the mic?
Thomas Bocchino, Boccino. Thank you.
Okay. Can you please provide the board with your education and experience as a professional planner licensed in New Jersey?
I have a degree in landscape architecture. I am a licensed landscape architect in the state of New Jersey, and I'm also a licensed planner in the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
Any objections? No, we accept. Please continue.
Thank you. Okay. First, Mr. Bocchino, can you describe for the board sort of the background of how this project began, why this property is something Somerset County desires to maintain, to preserve as open space, and sort of the process about how this came about?
Yes, we have two exhibits to my right. The one exhibit to the right is just a colored version of the proposed subdivision plan, showing the acreage that the county proposes to acquire. The exhibit to the left is an aerial map of the surrounding area. The yellow outline is the property. The cross-hatched area is the portion of the property, the 8 acres the county is proposing to acquire. All of the green is land, dark green is land that is owned already by Somerset County and preserved as open space. There's also some light green there, which is municipal preserved land. Just wanted to give a visual of how the property is fitting into the overall Sauerland Preserve.
I'll mark these exhibits A1 and A2.
And Mr. Bocchino, there is is there county-owned land adjacent on Long Hill Road, or does it front the other, what is the road that it fronts?
We have land that fronts on Long Hill Road, Shorn Lane, and Montgomery Road. So that would be Long Hill Road is to the right of the plan, Shorn Lane is to the left, and Montgomery Road is above towards the top of the map.
Okay. And can you confirm that the county does not plan to do any development on these 8 acres?
We do not. As you stated, there is the possibility as the trail network of the Sauerland Preserve grows, there may be opportunities for us to put a trail network that might cross the property, but no permanent structures would be proposed at any time.
And it would be passive recreation?
Only passive recreation.
Okay. And I described the variances that we're requesting. And in your role as a professional planner, can you give us your opinion as to the positive and negative, if any, aspects of the variances we're requesting?
Yes, I can. So the requested variance is for 56.01, the existing residence. The existing lot size and all setbacks are pre-existing non-conforming uses. Since there's no proposed development on the portion of the property to be acquired by the county, it's not believed that any of the nonconformances will be intensified and would not create any substantial detriment to public good. Referencing the municipal land use law, the proposed subdivision and preservation of the 8 acres as open space serves purposes of the MLUL by providing adequate light, air, and open space, promoting the establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations that will contribute to the well-being of persons, neighborhoods, communities, regions, and the preservation of the environment, providing sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial and industrial uses, and open space according to their respective environmental requirements in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens, and promoting the conservation of open space. So as part of the preservation, our goal was to obviously continue to expand on the Sauerland Preserve, which this property would do, as well as trying to protect river corridors, stream corridors, water bodies. There is a tributary to Cattail Brook that runs across this portion of the property that we're proposing to acquire. That would ensure that the stream buffers and the stream itself would be protected.
Okay, and in your opinion, does the proposal pose any detrimental impacts to the zoning in the area or the zone plan or the master plan?
No, do not believe it does.
All right. I've already confirmed the county will record the deeds, record the subdivision by deed.
Yes.
We'll dedicate the 13.5-foot right-of-way along Long Hill Road.
Yes, and the plans will be revised to reflect that.
We've touched on the driveway encroachment, lack of frontage.
Yes, just for some clarification, for the lack of frontage, seeing that the property is surrounded and around by the preserved open space, we have approximately 600 linear feet of frontage on Shorn Lane, and there's approximately 1,000 feet of frontage on Long Hill Road. All of that frontage would allow access to that property.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have for Mr. Pacino. I don't know if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to note to the board that originally when we went ahead and reviewed this application with Mr. Coyce in completeness, we did note that on Long Hill Road, if you look at your package, as you look at the plan, you notice that the right-of-way line is essentially meandering through roadway bed. So we did recommend, with the assistance with the engineering department, to look at the official map to establish where the right-of-way could be placed so that taking could take place. So that would be a condition, not only in Mr. Coyce's letter that's been notified, but also we want to make sure that stands out so that they work with the engineering department so that can be approved and they can go ahead and record that by deed.
Okay.
Thank you.
You go with that?
Yes, as we said, we're willing to right-of-way dedication.
Okay, any questions from the board members? Okay, can I have a motion to open to public?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, if there's anyone from the public that would like to question the witness on his testimony, please feel free to come up to the mic and state your name and address for the record. Again, no takers. Okay, so motion to close to public.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I'll just sum up very quickly. There's
Please.
not a lot more to say. We think that this application is a good one. It serves the purposes of the zone, as I stated, of preserving and protecting the Sourland Mountain. We don't believe it has any detrimental impacts. It'll be adding 8 acres of preserved open space in Hillsborough, contiguous with other county-owned open space. And it advances numerous purposes of zoning set forth in the MLUL, and we respectfully request that it be approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one quick question. Is there any long-term plan for the front piece that's staying, or is that just gonna?
There's no change, no change.
Okay. Mr. Bernstein, you want to summarize the resolution? Or
Basically, it's a resolution approving the application is submitted with the conditions agreed upon by the parties and set forth both in the testimony of the county's witness and the reports of Mr. Hay and Mr. Coyce.
Thank you. I have a motion for approval based on Mr. Bernstein's summary.
Sorry,
Sorry.
if I may, I just wanted to make it clear in terms of my report, since it becomes record, I do bring the attention of the driveway encroachment. So, wanted that for the board to take that into consideration and where they wanted to go. And the reason with the board engineer also why we listed that was to try to help protect the situation with the other property owner. So I don't know if there's a way to make it condition that they come up with some agreement to formally put that in place, but we wanted it to at least to be addressed however the board decides. So,
If I could just respond, just to note, as I said before, that when the current owner bought the property 37 years ago, the driveway was already in place. And there's been no problems between the two property owners in that period of time. It would be a hardship, in our opinion, to make them rip up the driveway. I don't know whether the other owner would be willing to sign a formal agreement, but we can certainly explore that option. And again, as I mentioned, there is some legal precedent for the concept that after 20 years of adverse use of it, an easement has already been created by law. But again, if the board is so inclined, we're certainly willing to try to explore getting a formal agreement in place. But it has been working well for the 37 years since the current owner.
I mostly raise this just so that the resolution isn't also saying that all compliance, in terms of my report, just so that we could be on the same page, whatever the board may decide, but just so that we could have a clean record for that. Thank you.
What are you recommending? You make a comment, both of you in the report, and then say, it's up to the board to decide. What are either or both of you recommending to the board relative to the driveway issue? I think Mr. Hay has something he wants to.
Yeah, I obviously I've been through this situation before, Mr. Bernstein, and I think what would be best is that the board consider a condition where the applicant would make every best effort to come up with a non-descriptive, I want to say easement or covenant to protect the driveway on the other property in case the property does change hands. If the property changed hands, obviously the new owner would want to know that if he makes some privacy into somebody else's property, there would not be an issue.
We can certainly agree to make those best efforts.
So there'll be a motion with this
With that
additional
with that
condition.
additional condition added.
Okay. So may I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Beeson?
Yes.
Mr. Belcourt?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz? Yeah. Mrs. Smith? Yes. Committeeman Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Mayor Labonte?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sarachi?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Okay, so going to move to our next application, Western Road LLC with file number 22-PB-03 MSPV with time of decision of June 30th of this year. And I will let everyone take their seats. Objectors to my left. And just to remind everyone, this application was continued from the March 23rd meeting of this year without further notice. And with that, Mr.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Bernstein.
Before the festivities begin, for the purposes of the record, I'd like to indicate that we have received a certification of by absent board member examination of record eligibility to vote from the Vice Chairman, Mr. Julian, for both the February 2nd and the March 23rd, 2023 meetings. We have received one from Committeeman Ciccarelli regarding the March 23rd meeting. We have received one from Mr. Radowitz from the March 23rd meeting. The video was reviewed by Mr. Julian, Mr. Ciccarelli, the transcript by Mr. Radowitz. They are all eligible to participate in this evening's application.
Thank you. Mr. Rodnick.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Mike Ogrodnik. I'm an attorney at Savo-Schalk Law Firm in Somerville. We're here for the fourth hearing on the Weston Road application. If you recall at the prior hearing, Mr. Ford presented the revised site plan, which is distinguished from the prior site plan in several important areas. The revised application reduces the square footage of the building from 140,155 square feet to 130,418 square feet. The revised site plan also substantially increases the pond-constructed basin. Additionally, the number of parking spaces is proposed to be reduced from 139 to 99 and added those 5 electrical EV-ready spaces. At our next hearing, we hope to introduce our architect, who will detail the other material changes to the structure, including enhancing certain architectural features, adding building color, and lowering the building height. Frontage is on Weston Road. Property is in the industrial, I-1 industrial zone, and is 18.2 acres in size, generally a wooded lot. The applicant seeks to improve the property with 1 industrial warehouse building and an accessory office. Notably, and most importantly, the proposed use is permitted principal use in the industrial zone. The applicant's use is consistent with the warehouse and industrial facilities near the property. Furthermore, the property is bordered by the Northern Suffolk Railroad, another heavy industrial use. Property was approved in 1990 for the planning board for 13 industrial warehouse lots. Those approvals are still valid. Property has been zoned industrial for approximately 40 plus years, and warehousing and offices have all remained permitted principal uses in the I-1, I-2, and I-3 zones. These uses are permitted principal uses as we sit here today. The I-1, I-2, and I-3 light industrial districts indicate that the purpose is to create zoning districts recognizing the existing pattern of small industrial-oriented facilities, allowing the remaining vacant lands in the same area to be developed with similar uses and provided for modest industrial operations. The proposed use of this property is consistent with the proposed stated and permitted uses as defined in the light industrial district, as confirmed by the planner's report dated November 10th, 2022, which states, quote, warehousing, shipping, and receiving completely within an enclosed building are permitted uses, close quote, citing 188-106B2 and 188-106B1 of the light industrial zoning district. This application meets all of the bulk requirements except for a max building height, meets the minimum lot area. It's actually more than 18 times greater than the minimum lot area. Multiple larger minimum lot depth, front yard, side yard, rear yard, lot setbacks. For maximum impervious coverage, we're well under the permitted of 60%, and as well as the buffer area is all compliant. The maximum building height is 35 feet in that zone, and 38.4 feet is proposed. Again, that's the only bulk variance identified in Mr. Coyce's memorandum, which was again updated recently. It bears emphasis that the only variance for this application, where the height exceeds the limit by 3.4 feet, is in areas that are not, elevations that are not facing the street or the objector's residential property across the street. The front elevation of the building is 34.475 inches, which is under the maximum building height for the zone. And again, just noting for the record, under the prior interpretation of the building height, this application would have 0 variances. Mr. Coyce's or Mr. Maskey's original memorandum did not identify a height variance. The elevation.
Mr. Chairman, I was waiting for Mr. Ogrodnik to take a breath. This is the 4th hearing and the 4th time we have heard this variation on the theme, as if somehow if I say it over and over again, it makes the application that much better. My understanding is that there may be changes to the last plan submitted to the board at the last hearing. If that's the case, Mr. Ogrodnik should focus on that for the purposes of this hearing, since the board has heard this description 3 other times. And I'm not sure it assists the board nor the record to keep saying the same thing over and over again. And that, by the way, applies to everybody else involved.
With me tonight, I have Mr. Michael Ford from Van Cleef Engineering. He's going to go over any alterations, if any, to the site plan since our last hearing. He was cross-examined by Mr. Ash, and I believe there was about a few minutes of questions left, and Mr. Ash had reserved his right to finalize the cross-examination. Then I believe Mr. Ford is subject to a public question, and then we would like to move to operations and traffic.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just for the purposes of the record, Mr. Ash was cross-examining Mr. Ford on the application and the plans he had before the board at the last hearing. Obviously, Mr. Ash may or may not have changes in his questioning, and the length of that questioning will depend, I suspect, on what he didn't cover from the last hearing and what needs to be addressed through Mr. Ford on this hearing, as well as the board's questions before we even get to Mr. Ash on that issue. So just a reminder to the board, things have again changed slightly, and therefore the situation has changed a bit as well. Fair.
Mr. Chairman.
Is the green light on?
Oh.
You're on.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Mike Sinkovich. I'm one of the attorneys that represents the Hearthstone community, the objectors to this application. I would like to raise a jurisdictional issue that we submitted a letter on last night, if that's okay with the board.
But be brief, because I've read it, so.
Okay. Thank you.
I know you want to get it on the record, so.
For the record, this concerns the small rectangular property, which is block 187, lot 7, that's entirely encompassed by the subject property at issue in this application. Our position here is twofold, but essentially is that we need landowner consent for the property owner of lot 7 to move forward with this application for 2 distinct reasons. The first being that the application itself directly impacts this small rectangular lot in a number of ways, which I summarize in my letter. But effectively what they are is the warehouse itself is just 25 or so feet from this lot. The grading plan produces a new slope in the northwest corner with grading that goes right up to this property line. This will end up putting surface water runoff flowing directly across this property, We also have our soil erosion and sediment control plan, includes an area of topsoil compaction that's immediately adjacent to Lot 7 on 3 sides, and there's a temporary topsoil stockpile within feet of Lot 7. The lighting plan creates lighting levels of 1.4 to 0.1 foot candles across the lot. And as discussed, as I will discuss in a moment, there's also a requirement to move the easement, the access easement from Lot 7 that goes right to Weston Road. So for that reason, our position is landowner consent is required to move forward with this application, just like it would be for Lot 1, which we're dealing with here. This is further just evidenced by some of the reports that were submitted by the applicant. In particular, the traffic report, for example, lists the subject property as both Block 185, Lot 1, and Block 187, Lot 7. This is a unique situation in which this property is entirely impacted, and consent should be required before moving forward. The second position that we made in our letter is that, as indicated on Mr. Ford's plans, there is a existing access easement that goes from Lot 7 directly to Western Road. And it says in the plan specifically that is to be relocated to the driveway that's going to be built for this application. Under existing case law, Klein versus Bernardsville Association, which is 267 NJ Super 473, number one, an easement cannot be, it's the exclusive right of the easement holder with that easement, and it cannot just be extinguished based on either a planning board decision or the servient property owner's decision to move the easement. So consent is required, and respectfully, the board itself can't just direct that the easement be moved. There's, I guess, one other factor that I did not know of when this letter was submitted that I want to bring up, and that is this property, Lot 7, is subject to a foreclosure action right now that's pending in Somerset County. There has not been a time set for redemption yet, but there's a motion pending in which the tax sale certificate redemption will be set, presumably in the next few months. The plaintiff in that matter is an entity by the name of Indus, INDUS, Developers, Inc., who I believe is associated with the developer in this matter, although that should be confirmed during testimony. But I think that also just proves another point that this piece of property is directly impacted. It's important for consent to be obtained, and we believe specifically that from a jurisdictional perspective, we can't move forward without that consent.
Mr. Gorodnik, I know you got a
Well, I'll try to keep this brief. That's a really novel, new argument that I've never seen advanced in a land use application, that an adjacent property owner needs to give consent to an application. There's a couple of errors. Number one, there's no recorded easement for Lot 7. I sent a letter indicating this was a part of an early 1900s subdivision that was never built. If you do this long enough, sometimes you find discrepancies in land use records, which is why everybody is required to buy title insurance. My clients are very close to perfecting the tax certificate of foreclosure, which will make this issue moot. I object on procedural grounds since this issue was raised last night, not 10 days prior, which counsel is keenly aware of the board rules having raised this issue to his client's benefit in the past. So in the municipal land use law, there's no requirement that if a property is substantially impacted by a land use application that you would require consent. You could imagine that no applications would proceed if you needed to get consent from adjacent landowners. That's not what the municipal land use law says. It's important to remember that Lot 7, although we will gain title, ownership title shortly on that, is to remain undisturbed. It provides additional forest buffering for the building. The argument that Lot 7 is a de facto portion of this property being developed doesn't cite any case law. We're required to give notice. That's just like any adjacent property owner. We've given notice to Lot 7. It's a 5,000 square foot undersized lot, which is obviously highly unlikely to be developed. The road that did give access, there was a public roadways that were part of that early 1900 subdivision plat. That roadway has been vacated, which has resulted in this landlocked parcel. Notice to the adjacent property owners is governed by the MLUL 4555 D76 it's set, as well as what echoes that statute in section 18820 of the Hillsborough Land Use and Development Ordinance. So there is no easement so we don't have to move the easement. So there's obviously, there's zero citation to any case law. There's zero to reference to this legal argument that they're raising. That's just because an adjacent parcel is impacted by an application that you have to gain consent. It's pretty well settled law. It's actually I've never even seen this argument advanced because it's governed pretty thoroughly by the notice section of the MLUL. This board has already taken jurisdiction. I note that we've spent $60,000 in application fees alone. We've spent probably several $100,000 in developing this site plan, consistent with the ordinance. We've tweaked it many times, and it would be incredibly irresponsible to suspend this application based upon the idea that an adjacent property owner may have substantial impact. I also have to thank my co-counsel, Mr. Chain, for raising a standing issue. They're advocating essentially on behalf of Lot 7, and you can't do that. You can't pick a lot without being retained by them and representing them. You can't just cherry pick a lot and say, oh, this lot is going to be especially impacted by this application, and we're going to argue that it's all these technical, novel, never advanced before legal arguments. So they don't have standing. It's untimely, and it's completely and utterly without any case law support or any merit.
If I may, I promise I'll be brief. There is no standing issue with us arguing this position. This is a question of whether the board itself can take jurisdiction. If that property owner which we submit is part of this application, they have to give consent to move forward. This is not us advocating on behalf of Lot 7. This is the position of whether or not the board does have jurisdiction to move forward. Number two, this is a novel argument in the sense that this is an extremely unique situation in which a small parcel is being unbelievably impacted and in fact effectively developed without the consent of the landowner. So we're not, Mr. O'Grotning is correct. There was no case law that we were to find on this issue, but that's because this is highly abnormal and highly unique. And frankly, I would imagine, as the applicant's trying to do now, they would either try to take title to that property or they would have obtained consent for a situation like this. So for those reasons, we stand by our position that landowner consent is necessary. And if this tax foreclosure matter is moving forward as quickly as they say it is, number one, there still would be a possibility that the current owner of Lot 7 could redeem the tax sale certificate so that the foreclosure doesn't go forward. That's number one. Number two, to the extent that they don't, this would not be a delay forever in perpetuity. This would be a delay until this foreclosure is completed, which I assume would be within a few months. I'm not positive, but that seems based on the record that I looked at this afternoon. So with that, we stand by our position that landowner consent is required.
Mr. Bernstein, complete the trifecta.
First of all, I didn't get the letter like everybody else did until late last night. In fact, I was spending the evening last night with Mr. Brook and Mr. Sinkovich's partner in a neighboring town. And Mr. O'Grodnick's equally interesting letter. We haven't had time to review this, but here's a 3-page letter while we haven't had time to review this. And they talk about us all being brief, attorneys on all sides. I haven't a clue, with all due respect to the board, as to whether either or both of these parties have merit in their arguments. because I will admit, I haven't had an opportunity in the last less than 24 hours to sit down and look at the issue. It is a novel issue, make no mistake about it. It is a small piece of property not owned by the current applicant, surrounded by the current applicant's application and the impact it may or may not have. I would suggest to the board that, one, if Mr. Ogrodnik would like to place in writing whatever his argument he was prevented from placing in writing with his letter today, I would suggest I would give him a few days to answer, and then we will provide an opinion to the board. And if at that point the board has no jurisdiction or it needs to be put on hold, the board will address it at the appropriate time. But for purposes of this evening, I cannot advise this board one way or the other as to whether either or both parties have any merit in either or both of their arguments. So until I advise you otherwise, that piece of the puzzle, I think, can still go forward. Michael, do you want to amend your letter?
No.
Okay.
It's just, it
No,
speaks for itself. I mean,
The answer is if you're not, then we will review both letters and render an opinion to the board
Okay.
before the in advance of the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have to agree. One of the things I know I've been, I've said this in other applications, probably this one, and Mr. Ash, I know you were probably one of my earlier, I'm not going to say victims, but recipients that, we're trying to move these things along. We're going to hear this one way at some point, and I know this lot was not being hidden. I mean, it was well known already. So, but in fairness, Mr. Bernstein will render a decision at some point, and if we need to take action at the next meeting. But since everyone's here, and I believe you even stated in your letter that you don't want to waste people's time, but we're out, so let's not waste our time, and let's do something productive tonight and move forward at this point. So, Mr. Ogrodnik,
with that, Mr. Ford.
should we swear him back in?
You swear any testimony you give tonight is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
For the record, you state and spell your name.
It's Michael Ford, F-O-R-D.
Any changes in your credentials since
No.
last time you were here? No gaps?
No.
Okay. May proceed.
Okay. Since the last hearing, we made a submittal on April 21st to the planning board secretary, Deborah Pageant, basically identifying that we made resubmittals to the Somerset County Planning Board, the Soil Erosion and Sediment Control District, as well as the Delaware American Canal Commission. All those applications remain pending. And this is all action that was taken subsequent to comments and what we understand directives that we received at the last hearing. Within the submittal letter to the planning board, we responded to engineering comments that we had received dated March 21st, specifically about half a dozen, and provided additional information in response to those comments, and have subsequently received another review memorandum from the board's engineer as well as the Mr. Coyce. The substance of the plan changes included providing a construction cost estimate for the entire project, as was directed at the last hearing in support of the tree mitigation economic hardship waiver, and then updating the plans with that reflected that updated cost estimate. And the result of that change from the prior cost estimate for the project was a decrease in cost for construction because of those substantial changes that were made since last November, where the building was reduced in size, the number of parking spaces was reduced, and so on. So the tree mitigation plan was updated, and the landscape plan was supplemented with an additional about 150 trees. We had 32 trees on the last landscape plan, and we're up to 184 now, with the remaining tree mitigation obligation being proposed as a contribution to the township in accordance with the ordinance, or planting of said trees at locations the township directs. From other site plan element changes, there was a issue raised at the last hearing with regards to specifics regarding the water quality measures, that is the manufactured treatment devices, and using a methodology of soil or SCS method with 10-minute per inch or 10-minute time of concentration. The supplier of those mechanical treatment devices made an error and did the calculation with the SCS method with that 10-minute time of concentration. They did the analysis, provided us with new mechanical treatment devices for the entire site. This is basically water quality measures that are installed adjacent to catch basins. So it's a device that accepts stormwater in the first flush before it gets to the catch basin to provide that filtering mechanism for water quality measures. And I'll report to the board that the result of that analysis increased the number of mechanical treatment devices on the site to 24 from 21 at the last hearing. The detention basin size has remained unchanged. We did supply an updated stormwater management report that was part of the submittal to the Delaware American Canal Commission and the Soil Conservation District, which clarified some issues that were raised at the last hearing, including descriptive point of analysis. The result is unchanged. That is, as I reported at the last hearing, the detention basin since November has basically been doubled in size, and the analysis that we've done is not just for the current stormwater rainfall events, but we've actually already done the analysis utilizing what is the pending proposed rule changes by DEP for the future rainfall events. And the basin complies with the reductions for all the required rainfall events and meets the reduction not just by a slim margin, but by a substantial margin.
Just to confirm, you'd like me to go before the board?
Oh, sorry, one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Has a long breath.
What's that? Long breath? Yeah, sorry. The township, the board engineers report requested soil data, and I reported to the board at the last hearing that there was additional soil data that was not part of our original or our last submittal because it didn't impact or wasn't relevant to the submittal. But we included all the prior soil tests, soil logs that we had done at the site, specifically some exploratory tests that we did in November of 2022. So that was after the hearing in November, as well as in February of 2023. And that's in addition to the soil tests that we had already provided as part of the report that were performed in early 2022, as well as in March of 2023. And then since the hearing, out of an abundance of caution, we revisited the site and did an additional 22 soil logs. And I know that the question of the reclassification of soils from C to D was discussed at the last hearing. The BMP requirements for the two areas of reclassification of soils that were explored on the site, in accordance with the BMP regulations, 8 tests were required to make such a determination. In that area, we did 16, so double the required number that would be necessary to substantiate the change. And in the other areas, 17 tests are required, and we did 37 tests in that area that substantiated the change. And in the the May 1st, 2023 review memorandum from Pannoni Associates, and I'm reading from page 5, item 5. Based on the soil exploration results, the soil is considered as a hydrologic soil group D. And again, under item 6 on that same page 5, there's a statement, based on the soil exploration results, the soil is considered as a soil hydrologic soil group D. I'm not taking a deep breath. I'm passing on the mic.
And Mr. Chairman, you'd like me to go before the board? Or would the board would like to ask questions?
I would like, Mr. Chairman, I'd like Mr. Ford to continue, analyzing our letter before I respond. There's multiple other issues that need to be discussed.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay. This is the May 1st, 2023 review memorandum from Pannoni Associates. Page 1 lists the materials reviewed. Page 2 continues to reference the materials. Page, at the bottom of page 2 starts general comments. Item 1 is identified and concluded as a comment. Item 2 is indicated as satisfied. Or should I go to the specific ones that there's any issues? Because a number of the comments are just considered satisfied.
Right.
In the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, I would say that for the items that are not satisfied, that the applicant provide a response.
Okay, thank you. Item 4 is on page 3 is identified as not satisfied. It's an architectural element to be addressed by our architect when he testifies. Item 6 references the tree mitigation economic hardship waiver and identifies that in our economic hardship waiver, we say that 170 trees are planted on site, but they count on the plan 184 trees are planted on site. So it's actually, that we planted more than what we said, or we're proposing to plant more than what we said we would, and we correct that typo. Item 7 references April 12th review, or a will serve letter from Mr. Hogue of the Hillsborough Township Municipal Utilities Authority. And I've been in communication with Mr. Hogue since that letter was issued, and it actually references the wrong lot and block. It's block 135, lot 1, and says that the property is not within the sewer service area. But I've since received a corrected letter from Mr. Hogue that says the site is within the sewer service area. It's, been received, since we made our submittal. So we'll update the record. And I'll state for the record that part of the prior application that Mr. Ogrodnik referenced for the development of the site with multiple lots for industrial use, there was a treatment works approval issued for that for extension, so that the site isn't within the sewer service area. Next item that's not satisfied is identified as item 11 on page 4. That's the bold statement is that the applicant shall provide retaining wall calculations to the building department prior to construction. So that would be for the retaining walls. Those detailed structural calculations would be done as part of the building permit required for any building of a retaining wall over 4 feet high, and we'll comply. Item 1, under stormwater heading on page 4, identifies that the DNR Canal Commission approval is still outstanding. And again, we've made an application, or basically to update the DNR Canal Commission with the plan changes that have taken place since they issued their prior letter that basically said all the elements under their jurisdiction were done to their satisfaction, but they wouldn't act on the application until proof of a county planning board approval and township municipal planning board approval was provided to them. But again, we've resubmitted the current plans to them, so they're on the same page as where the planning board is now. We've made a submittal. The next 2 items on that page are considered satisfied. On page 5, there are no remaining items on page 5 that are not considered satisfied. Under page 6, under the heading of traffic comments, item 1 is not satisfied. It's, I think, references to testimony, which we hope to present testimony from our traffic engineer this evening. The other 3 comments under traffic are identified as satisfied. Under miscellaneous comments at the bottom of page 6, it's indicated as ongoing requirement. That's the freshwater wetland permits required for the site, and we'll comply with that, as well as any other outside agency approvals that are necessary. Items 2 and 3 under miscellaneous are considered satisfied. Under item 4, this is with regards to the construction cost estimate. There is a request that the applicants provided for an on-site construction cost estimate, but a separate cost estimate's been requested for the improvements within the public right-of-way, and we'll comply with that request. Item 5 under miscellaneous again references the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission approval, and items 6 and 7 are satisfied.
Thank you. Good.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I've listened to the testimony we're going with respect to the engineering letter. The letter that we represent that Mr. Ford originally supplied to us, it said that it was not in the sanitary sewer area. Now the applicant's saying that it is. I think the question and clarification we need to have to close out a majority of the site plan issues is whether or not, number one, there's any of the off-site improvements that are being presented are going to be not changing. That's number one. So that at least that I can give the satisfaction of the board the fact that there won't be any substantial changes on the remaining off-track improvements, which might be paving curb to curb, what have you. I do need to get a little bit more clarification of that so that we can finalize that. Because again, we don't have that revised letter, so I can't tell you if whether or not the improvements will be satisfactory by the MUA or not. So that we do need to look at. That is common practice. It is considered outside approval, could condition it, but I would caution the board because of the extent of work that's going to be done in the adjacent right-of-way into another adjacent right-of-way. So it would be good to see that so the board would have clarification, the public would have clarification as the extent of the work that's going to be done in the right-of-way. So they asked Mr. Ford to provide that plan so I can provide a report to the board and I can make sure that there's not going to be any further issues, any further improvements that's beyond this plan. So I would caution the board on that. With respect to the economic hardship, and I know Mr. Coyce probably will opine on that, I can tell you that if you look at the amount of trees that have been asked for in terms of the economic hardship request, there is some satisfaction with that, but my issue with it is whether or not there is an opportunity to do even more. And as the board knows on prior applications, there has been efforts on other developers to go ahead and show ways to go ahead and show additional trees in areas that might be considered green space. So I do, and I think as part of the exercise, obviously with the sewer, Mr. Chairman, I think it would be incumbent upon the applicant to make sure that the amount of trees that are being provided is maximized because of the amount of green space that's being shown on that plan. And of course, that plan is obviously a rendering. There is green space that may be protected, but if there is green space that is open, I would think that it would be in the board's best interest that the trees be maximized in those areas. And beside those two issues, Mr. Chairman, I will tell you and put on the record that the stormwater issues, I'm completely satisfied with. Obviously, we will have to put a condition on, I'll ask the board to put a condition that the Township Engineering Department will review the drainage within the right-of-way as we're in the midst of doing our inspections of the piping that's in the right-of-way as part of our permitting. The mayor and I are very aware of what that is going to require. This applicant will have to work with us to make sure that that is an adequate capacity and that there's no damages to any of that piping that's there now. And that's about all I think that we would put as outside conditions on this letter. But I do believe this applicant should come back to talk about those two issues because I don't think that they're both satisfied and I really can't close out the site issues without those items being addressed.
Okay.
We'll comply. It actually, we show the sanitary sewer connection through the site. Well, I have a copy, we can, right with me to the site. It was really just an oversight on, I think, the MUA's side when we asked for the will serve letter referencing the wrong property, but certainly will comply.
And I would just request, Mr. Chairman, we just make sure that a thorough plan review was done. We know what the implications are. So if there are additional constraints that I would put on along with the township engineer's acceptance, we would do that because there may be an opportunity to not just have a trench, for instance, with sewer, but if the condition of road warrants curb to curb or edge of pavement to edge of pavement repaving, that's what it might entail. So I think the plans need to be reviewed so we can look at it one last time and bless it. And again, as I stated, there is an opportunity to do, I believe, to do more trees on this property. And I think the applicant needs to go back and look at that again. And then come back with a plan that's going to maximize the amount of trees. It is inconceivable for me to look at and tell you that 184 trees is going to satisfy a replacement, of 3,745. I think there's an opportunity. The applicant needs to look at this with his landscape architect and come up with a better plan.
Good. Joyce, anything?
Mr. Ford, can you address my report dated May 2nd?
Yes, the entirety of the report is regarding the tree mitigation plan, and I think since we've just heard from Mr. Hay that we need to revisit the landscaping, we'll do that and address your comments as part of that effort.
Thank you.
Chairman? Mr. Ogrodnik, remind me, are you planning on Sorry. Mr. Ogrodnik, you planning on calling a landscape architect?
It happens all the time.
No, the landscaping design is done by Van Cleef Engineering, and we'll elicit testimony through Mr. Ford.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I sat through another planning board warehouse application last night in another town, myself and Mr. Brook. And what the board received was a presentation from a landscape architect showing what purportedly the growth of trees would look like on the property at 1 year, and at 10 years. And the applicant in that application contended that the mature trees or the tree growth over the 10 years would provide a significant buffer from viewing by the neighboring property which for the purpose of the record is Canal Walk in Franklin Township. So I would suggest to the board that based on what I saw last night and based on what I think is an appropriate situation, that maybe the board would like to see just such a series of renderings from Mr. Ford's office to show what the impact of the trees and the tree growth will be on the property over a period of time to address the issue of view and related items to this application.
The applicant will comply with that request for a rendering, but I just wanted to emphasize.
I will indicate it was more than a rendering, Mr. Ogrodny. It was a series of slides literally showing over the period of time what the growth would look like at current 1 and 10.
All right, I just want to re-emphasize that the green areas that are on the site plan are not grass. It's all forest to remain forest. So all that portion of the site, it essentially blocks the entire front elevation from view. So we will do it, but I think that there was some confusion. That is not grass. That's all forest to remain. Several acres.
Possibly an elevation plan showing that might help.
We'll comply with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And just actually, before we move on, I just wanted to state also in my report that there was significant information provided on the on-site estimates, but in terms of the estimated cost of the building, do you intend to provide a backup to help show how that number was provided?
Yes,
Okay.
that when I say we'll comply with those comments that was included.
Everything that's stated. Thank you very much.
Understood that it's, there's significant breakdown of the other elements, but not that one.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to reintroduce myself, my name is Jordan Ash with the firm Riker Danzig, and I represent, along with Mr. Sinkovich sitting next to me, the Hearthstone Community, the Homeowners Association specifically, which objects to this site plan application. Mr. Ford, when were the current stormwater management rules adopted?
You're referring to the state?
Yeah.
Okay. There was an amendment in April of 2021 regarding green infrastructure. And now there's published changes that are to be implemented.
But the 2021 amendments are what controls this application, correct?
Well, and periodically over time, the BMP manual is updated different sections. So there may be specific sections of the BMP manual that change.
What about specifically NJAC 7:8?
But no, the BMP manual is the stormwater regs within the DEP above and beyond, or providing more specific guidance than the NJ 7.8.
All right. You would agree with me that when you were initially designing this project, and for all the revisions to this project, you have been and are familiar with the applicable stormwater management rules, correct?
Yes.
Okay. In your opinion, when did this site plan come into compliance with the rules?
The oversight from the mechanical treatment device suppliers is the one corrective action that we've made since the last hearing. But prior to that, the changes that we made since the November hearing were efforts to go well beyond and above the stormwater regs, including the separate downstream analysis on your client's property that demonstrates this project will result in a decrease in the peak flow at the downstream, within that project.
Okay, and to clarify, on their most recent amendment, you also added 2 points of analysis to correct the peak flow analysis, correct?
I would not characterize it as a correction. Mr. Ash, I would characterize it as a clarification to make it clear that that's our responsibility. That was what we endeavored to represent in the last, point analysis. While there was one POA, there were two separate hydrographs for the two areas that drain to those 2 points along our frontage where there's culverts. One being the area that drains into your client's detention basin, and I'm highlighting it now along the eastern frontage of our site, and that pipe goes into Basin C, which is identified on those plans by others for that project. And the result of this project will be a reduction in the drainage area to that portion, that site of about 4 acres, and a reduction in the peak flow for the 100-year storm from 11 CFS for the area of development to under 1 CFS. And then the other pipe is where our detention basin extends that pipe, because right now our site discharges into a ditch along Weston Road and then enters that pipe.
And those 4 acres, where are they going now?
The 4 acres I was just referencing are a portion of the site that drains to that pipe that in existing condition enters Basin C. As part of the development of the site, those areas that are developed are all graded such that they're captured, and the stormwater runoff from those areas is directed into the detention basin, which provides for that volume of storage to temporarily detain the stormwater and release it at a controlled rate such that the peak runoff from the site is reduced by the required amounts for the 210 and 100-year storm.
And that latter basin that you just pointed to, that's the one that we initially thought was going to the basin on the Hearthstone community, but is now going somewhere else. Is that right?
I'm not sure you understand what I just said.
Please help me.
The board doesn't
No, the basin, that basin, the pond constructed wetland on your site, where that 4 acres is now going to.
Correct.
I'm just trying to clarify. That's the basin that connects to the pipe that was initially thought to go to the Hearthstone Basin. Is that correct?
Right. We went over that at the last hearing.
Okay. And where does that water actually go?
That goes right now, today, it goes into a ditch along Weston Road, then it enters that pipe, and then that pipe runs through the Hearthstone project.
And where does it discharge?
It discharges at a water course beyond what's on the plan now, so more than what's shown on the plan.
Are you aware, is that discharge point, is that on the Hearthstone property, or is that beyond?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then one more thing that you also submitted in your April submission was additional data to support your recharge analysis. Is that correct?
No, additional data. You're talking about soil data?
The soil logs.
Okay,
yes,
yeah.
sir.
The soil data is not to support the recharge analysis, Mr. Ash. The soil data was out of abundance of caution to demonstrate that the reclassification of the soils from C to D is warranted, as has been acknowledged by Mr. Hay.
Okay, I appreciate that. With regards to the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission, there's currently a pending approval from them. Is that correct?
Well, we have an application that we submitted at the same time we made the submission to the township. We received a letter from the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission back in the fall of last year that basically acknowledged all the aspects of the project, complied with their regulations. But since there's been these changes in the application since that letter was issued, we would normally, in my 30 years of experience, would have waited until all the changes were made to the plan and the Township Planning Board was satisfied, and normally as a condition of approval, all the other outside agencies approvals are addressed. But in this case, since we had the revised plans done, we made the submittals to both DNR Canal Commission, the Soil Erosion and Sediment Control District, as well as the county.
Okay, and to date, following your April submission to the DRCC, the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission, I know you know that, I'm just not using acronyms. Have you received any feedback or response from that agency?
It's my understanding that's on their engineer's list to review, about 6 down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has any application yet been made to the DEP for the any of the required permits?
No.
Okay. When do you intend to submit said application to DEP?
That actually has been handled by the applicant's environmental consultant, so I don't know the answer to that.
Are you aware, will we have the opportunity to speak to that individual?
Not, I'm just the engineer, sir, so
Understood.
it's not an engineering question.
All right. So just going back a little
Sorry.
bit, you don't have to apologize.
So upset.
The original plans for this site, which you first drew up, were dated February 1st, 2022. They agreed, or they stuck with the NRCS HSG soil characterization of C and included recharge as a part of this site. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And as of that time, you had been to the site one time to do soil logs, and you collected about 22 logs in January of 2022. Is that correct?
I don't know the exact number, sir. We were out in February of 2022, I believe it was, yes.
Okay. Would you agree that at that time, the collected data was consistent with the NRCS mapping of sea soils?
I think that really the misunderstanding here is that since that time, we've been out to the site at least 3 other times, and the conclusion of the multiple tests, now over 80, supports the D soils.
What about those 22 tests? What did that tell you?
That told me that we didn't have a single successful basin flood test, and that's required for supporting a BMP unless you use an alternate test. After having done hundreds of septic systems in the township and throughout the area, and used other testing procedures such as pit BALE tests, since that was a test that was taken off the list, and that's all we had as any kind of permeability data for the deeper soils on the site. We went back out in fall of last year to attempt additional basin flood tests. None of those passed. In fact, to date, we've done 13 basin flood tests, actually over 13 basin flood tests, but none of those 13 passed, and there were a number that were attempted and abandoned because they weren't moving at all. So it tells me that there's not only an issue with seasonal high groundwater table within 24 inches that supports the D soil classification, there's also a lack of permeability to support an infiltration type of BMP. And while, as an engineer, I might endeavor to try other testing methodologies, given the scrutiny that applications like this get, I abandoned the idea of trying to utilize an alternate test method like a pit BALE test. And since none of the basin flood tests passed, that really, I'll say, sealed the conclusion that it was a D soil.
Just to clarify, though,
I'm just going to pause because I think we might be at a good point for a break. About 10 minutes? Okay. It's just about 8:30 now, so we'll reconvene at 8:40.
Joy to be.
All right, Mr. Ash, you can continue your questioning.
Yeah.
all right, thank you. So, Mr. Ford, just to reorient us, you were speaking of basin flood testing that was done. To confirm, the basin flood testing was not done at all until November 2022. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
The site conditions in February of 2022, is my recollection, really didn't support even an attempt of a basin flood test. It wasn't, supportive of trying.
what specific site conditions prevented a basin flood test?
Groundwater infiltration. You have to do a basin flood test above the groundwater table, above any seepage, and that's what, as I recall, the reason for some pit bale tests being done. But again, it's moot. We've been to the site multiple times since then, and now at over 80 soil logs, we've come to a conclusion that the board engineer agrees with.
So in your opinion, then it's moot that the data in January, only 4 of the 22 tests were consistent with D-soils, logs, I should say.
That's your opinion, and or someone's opinion that's telling you that. It's not my opinion.
Well, I'm not telling you my opinion. I'm asking you your opinion.
Our endeavors in at the beginning of the project, as with any project, is to identify a suitable location for recharge. So that's what the tests were intended and endeavored to do.
Okay. Can you talk me, and maybe I'm the only one in the room, but I don't think so, through the process of a basin flood test?
A basin flood test is an excavation to a depth where the test is to be done in fractured shale, filling it with water, 12 inches, letting it drain within 24 hours, filling it again after 24 hours, or if it drains within that 24-hour period. And under the current septic regs, if it drains within a 24-hour period, it's suitable for a septic. The stormwater regs are even more stringent. It requires a draining of that second filling within 12 hours. And at the conclusion of that, you don't get a specific permeability rate like you do with a pit bale test, but you get the ability to use 0.5 inches per hour for any infiltration BMP design.
And does all soil with 0.5 inches per hour equate to D soils?
Any soil that doesn't have a passing basin flood test doesn't support an infiltration BMP design. Our results that concluded the reclassification of D soils was based on the depth of groundwater. As I stated earlier, the pit bale test, the 13 that didn't pass, further support that the site is not suitable for an infiltration BMP.
I just want to clarify my question. You testified just now that the basin flood test, if it fails, gets us to a condition where we have soils that drain at 0.5 inches per hour. Is that correct?
No, I said that if basin flood test passes for that is drains the second filling and within 12 hours, you can use 0.5 inches per hour for an infiltration BMP design. If it doesn't pass, you don't have a suitable permeability test for an infiltration BMP design.
All right, so you again visited the site in March of 2023. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
We discussed this at the last hearing.
Well, I just want to clarify some things. And then you collected 25 soil logs at that visit. Is that correct?
Don't recall the number, sir. We discussed it at the last hearing.
Okay, and relying on this collected data, you proposed for the first time a site that provided no recharge in revised plans dated on the last day of that testing. Is that correct?
I believe really that what should be recognized is where we are right now is since the last hearing, we did an additional 22 tests. And I cited in my opening remarks and testimony that we did more than double the amount of tests required by the BMP to reclassify the soil as D soils. So
I appreciate that, but I'd also like an answer to my question.
don't recall your question, sir.
Can you read it back?
And relying on this collected data, you proposed for the first time a site that provided no recharge and revised plans dated on the last day of that testing. Is that correct?
If you, yes, the plans that, and the report at our last hearing, we discussed that we believe the site should be reclassified as de-soils. That's correct. That's.
And you're relying on the March soil testing?
No, right now, we're relying on an additional 22 tests. The engineer's conclusion that it is de-soils.
Okay, so when you went back to the site in April of this year, it was the 10th through the 14th, as you're pointing out, you collected data from 22, I believe it was, additional soil logs, is that right?
I've said that multiple times already, sir, tonight.
Okay, and is it correct also that the purpose of this visit was only to confirm and collect additional data in support of the proposed change from the HSG mapping of sea soils to de-soils?
I'm going to object. That's mischaracterizing the testimony, Mr. Ford.
I don't believe that it is,
It's
and
also irrelevant.
I think it's highly relevant.
So the DEP has exclusive jurisdiction over this issue.
That's not correct.
The township engineer agrees with the soil classifications, and you're asking the same questions over and over again. Could you kindly get to the point?
I'm trying to ask about the consistency of the data that we have before us. Respectfully, the board engineer has not heard testimony from the objecting engineer yet, and I think these questions are very relevant, and I think answers should be given.
Then just ask the questions one time so we can move this along.
I don't believe I'm asking questions more than once unless I'm not getting a direct answer. Can you read back my question, please?
And is it correct also that the purposes of this visit was only to confirm and collect additional data in support of the proposed change from the HSG mapping of sea soils to de-soils?
I'm going to object to the form of the question. You're mischaracterizing the prior testimony. I'm going to instruct my witness not to answer the question.
I didn't even say anything about prior testimony. I asked him if the
I'm going to instruct my client not to answer that question. Move on.
Mr. Bernstein, can I look to you for that, please?
My suggestion to the board is that we move on and that Mr. Ford's answering or not answering will be addressed accordingly when the board makes his decision.
I understand that. So when you went out in April of 2023, were you prepared to totally redesign your site yet again to include recharge if the newly collected data instead supported the NRCS mapping and the initial soil logs?
I'm going to object. That's an argumentative question.
Maybe an argumentative question, but he should answer the question. This is not court.
Yeah, the soil tests are done as a work of discovery to either support or one conclusion or another. It's not like the tests are done. It really is irrelevant what the purpose of and what your objective is of doing the soil testing, because the results are what they are. They support one conclusion or another. And like I said, since the last hearing, we did an additional 22 that's results in more than double the amount of soil tests that were required to make the reclassification in one area, and more than double at 17 required, 37 were done that resulted in the data that supported the reclassification. And I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself now.
As of November 22, you had conducted 29 tests, right? Wasn't that sufficient?
No, because we had heard through this application or other applications the concerns about using alternate methods of doing permeability tests. And since we didn't have any conditions that supported, as I said already, the conducting of basin flood tests, we went back out to try to attempt to do basin flood tests.
All right. And is it correct that you've been aware of the public opposition to this project since its inception, or at least for a long time now?
The objection as the form of the question. Don't answer. It's irrelevant. Don't answer.
Answer the question, Mr. Ford.
How is it relevant if Mr. Ford is aware of opposition to an application?
I'm just going to say I need the information.
Get to the question, Mr. Ash.
Okay.
Answer the question, Mr. Ford.
You know what? I'll ask the next question. At any time during the preparation or lead up to any of these 6 soil sampling events, did you consider inviting a representative of the opposition or perhaps this board to observe?
That really wouldn't have been my decision. Perhaps another witness or the applicant can answer that. And I would have no objection. In 30 years of engineering, I don't know that there's been many development applications where I have been here where it's received with open arms. It seems like there's always objections. I'll say in the industry as engineers, our understanding is people don't show up to support your application, they're against it. And I'm really just trying to do my job to help somebody to develop their property in accordance with the regulations and implement proper engineering subject to review by multiple, agencies.
Were you present for this soil logs?
No.
What did you do to verify the soil logs?
The data was reported by our field technician.
All right. Moving off recharge. Generally speaking, can a project that complies with the stormwater management rules still cause or exacerbate flood conditions?
That's really not my purview. I'm given regs to follow, and whether the state agency regs don't address that issue is really that's not my.
Is it your opinion that the regs create flood-proof development?
My opinion is that there's a misconception about what the regulations do, and that the impoundment of water in basins, because of the perception that just reducing the peak doesn't achieve its goal.
Okay, and you testified previously, you recall that you were aware of prior flood conditions at the Hearthstone community. Is that correct?
Yeah, at the initial hearing, I said that I actually, probably 2 years ago, was called by the operator of the HOA. I met, I think, the still HOA president at the site and walked the site with a number of residents right after the Ida storm event who had basements that flooded, and there was observations and basically my understanding, a conclusion that the direct connections from the footing drains by gravity to the deep storm sewer that drained in portions of the property backed up into those basements, and the remedy was to put backflow preventers or disconnect those pipes so that there couldn't be a backflow from the storm system into those basements. So yes, and wasn't asked to do any more consulting, didn't issue a invoice.
So are you able then to testify today that this project, which will cut down acres of trees and add acres of impervious coverage at this property, adding gallons of volume of runoff of water from the site, will not worsen or exacerbate the flood conditions at the Hearthstone community?
Like another application that you're familiar with, where there was a request to do a downstream analysis, and while it's not required by the rules, we did a downstream analysis in this case and determined that as a result of this application, the on-site stormwater management facilities that are twice the size of what the current regs are, had twice the size of the original submittal and designed in accordance with the future rainfall events, would result in a discharge or a reduction in the peak flow at the within that that community. And that was done by opering and obtaining copies of the drainage reports that were done as part of the Hearthstone project by that engineer and basically replicating their data with this site implemented as it always had, drained to that site, both in the existing condition and then the future condition.
So am I understanding it correctly? That
So the
it's-
peak flow reduces.
I appreciate the difference between peak flow and volume and flooding. My question is I just want to, it's an important point to clarify. Are you saying that based on the off-site stormwater analysis that you did, you are able to testify that this will not cause or exacerbate flooding?
That's not a requirement. It's not something that we're required to analyze. We've analyzed it in the way it was suggested on another project that demonstrated that there was a reduction in the peak flow regarding number of volume. If it could have gallons more water, but if it's released at a slower rate and discharges over time, it would reduce the peak flow in any watercourse or downstream area so that there wouldn't be an exacerbation of flooding. That's the goal. So there's been an effort well above and beyond what is required by the regulations and demonstrated in calculations not only in accordance with the regulations, but with that downstream analysis.
I'll give you one more chance to answer yes or no.
I'm going to object as asked and answered. I'm going to instruct my witness not to answer the question.
Now, actually, Mr. Ogrodnik, it hasn't been answered. It may have been asked several times, but it hasn't been. Can he answer the question?
Well, if peak flow is what results in flooding, the analysis that demonstrates that the peak flow is lessened, I would say from an engineering principle standpoint that the flood level at where that peak flow is analyzed, since it's lower in the post-development construction, that the water level would be reduced.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Mr. Ash, move on.
Gladly. Are you here to address anything about the wetlands LOI or the flood hazard verification?
Only that there was a prior DEP issuance of a LOI and flood hazard area verification that we represent on our plans.
And is the applicant intending to rely first on the LOI?
We are relying on it as has been shown on the plans.
Okay, that LOI is issued to John Guastella Jr. of Guastella Family Associates LP. This applicant is not associated with Guastella Family Associates, is that correct?
That's the current owner of the property.
Okay, are you aware of NJAC 7:7A-4.6, which states that a person who has issued a letter of interpretation shall be entitled to rely on the determination for a period of 5 years? So again, this applicant is not the person who has issued that LOI?
I think that there was an environmental impact statement that was submitted as part of the application that speaks to wetlands, and I would say as a professional engineer, regardless of who the LOI is issued to, that doesn't change the limits of the wetlands.
And similarly, the flood hazard verification states on the document, it verifies the riparian zone limits as shown on the approved sheet stated, I'm paraphrasing, January 25th, 2019, last revised June 10th, 2020. These plans are not the same as the ones for this application, correct?
Yeah, that was part of a permit that was issued for a disturbance of the riparian zone as part of that FHA approval for the construction of a road.
Okay.
And again, we're not relying on or seeking to disturb that riparian zone, but the limits of the riparian zone were established by DEP as part of that permit. And again, I think we said this at the first hearing, the riparian zone determination was a 50-foot riparian zone, while we've respected the 150-foot stream corridor ordinance and not sought to engage or point at the township's code where they specifically reference where those regulations are not intended to be in objection or contrary to DEP regulations, and DEP regulations govern. We're still respecting the 150-foot. We're not seeking to get, or implement the 50-foot riparian zone. And we're not proposing any impacts to that would require an FHA permit.
The FHA verification, is that needed?
Again, as part of that prior approval, we have it.
Okay. On your site plans on sheet 2, which I realize is not the one we have in front of us, why is there an existing 20-foot wide access easement to block 187, lot 7, shown on that sheet?
That's from the township tax records and the survey for the property.
Okay, and I don't have any more questions at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I would remind the public that we are now at the time where they get to cross-examine Mr. Ford. Only those individuals not represented by Mr. Ash and Mr. Sinkovich will be permitted to do so. You will need to indicate on the record that you are not being represented by them, as well as your name and address, et cetera. And on behalf of the chair, I will remind you all, for those of you who have not been here, please limit your questioning to the testimony from Mr. Ford and any examination conducted by either Mr. Ogrodnik or Mr. Ash. There will be plenty of time later relative to the overall aspect of the application once all testimony has been provided.
Okay. Then may I have a motion to open the public?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, if anyone from the public that's not represented by the Objectors Council, you're free to come up to cross-examine Mr. Ford strictly on his testimony. And it is questions, and also just state your name and address for the record. So,
My name is Maria Walsh. I am not represented by anyone here. I live at 7
You
Onca Drive.
can remove the mic from.
I live at 7 Onca Drive, Hillsborough. I guess in layman's terms, I'm trying to follow everything that's going on here. That's why I'd rather hear it. But I do want to understand this, and I actually, in layman's terms, will this construction exacerbate the current flooding issues that are going on in this town?
I think, like I said in the last hearing, even the downstream analysis that we did where we demonstrate the peak flow reduces by 13, 14 CFS, that's not significant in the realm of major regional flooding. So I don't think there'll be any appreciable difference one way or the other. Even though I'm saying we're reducing the peak flow, I acknowledge that that's really not a significant enough change to really change regional flooding. There really needs to be a more regional approach to it.
Okay, so what you're saying is regionally, we need to work on this as region. And that's where I'm looking at you guys, because
Right, but-
everybody's coming little bit by little bit, changing
Sorry.
right,
warehouses.
but I don't want you to go off onto a tangent. I think save that for a Tuesday night with the Township Committee.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but but it's a point well taken.
Excuse me? Oh.
Hi, I'm Tim Conlon. I'm not represented by anybody here, and I live at 109 Michelle Lane. Mr. Ford, two questions. One, you said that you revised the stormwater calculations based on the pending regulations from the state DEP. Is that correct?
We since the November hearing, we made that change, so that would have been part of the, yes.
So those are the proposed regulations that haven't been published yet?
They were published in the New Jersey Register in December. They received public comment until February, and I think right now it's in the hands of DEP as to when they publish them for adoption.
Okay, so they've been published, but then that goes to my question, which was since my understanding is that they haven't been adopted yet, I was wondering how you got that, you were working from a draft or from published commentary. Okay.
At the I think the November hearing, I reported to the board that, we, in the industry, this is what we follow. The governor had proposed potentially having emergency rules, I think in June of last summer. That stopped. Then started, and again, we are in constant contact with staff members at DEP for guidance and in an effort to do designs that don't just meet the regs but exceed those. And again, in this case, that's what we did already.
If for some reason the regulations were to change again before they were actually published or adopted, I guess would be the correct term, would you be willing to update the calculations and revise the design again to meet the regulations if they become even more stringent?
That's a good point. Thanks for the question. I would say that we'd have to discuss that with our applicant on what the the impacts would be. Since these types of changes take some time, and right now the change is pretty significant for a 100-year storm. The 24-hour rain event we're using now is 8.2 inches per hour. The change in the regs for the future storms, there's actually two storms, a percent increase of the current storm event and then a future storm that you have to design for. But the future storm is up in the vicinity of 12 inches of rainfall, so literally a 50% increase. So, but short answer is yes, we consider it and we could discuss it with our client.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brian Tarantino, Fairfield Lane. So, Mr. Ford, is the total volume of water being discharged from the site increasing or decreasing?
It's increasing.
And it's increasing how much?
Don't know that number. It's in our report, but it's not something that we analyze. Per the DEP regs, we're required to reduce the peak storm rain events such that for the 2, 10, and 100-year storm, the discharge at our property boundary is reduced by 50, 75, and 80%, and we're well below that.
Right. But the total volume of water being discharged from the site is increased.
Right. Again, I think this goes to the misconception. I could have a small bottle of water right now and pour it into a funnel really fast and overflow that funnel. Or I could have a really big bottle of water and pour it into that funnel at a low rate and not overflow that funnel.
Right.
So the volume is, not the aspect that the regs have us address. It's the peak flow.
So,
because I don't want to pour water into that funnel so fast that it exceeds the existing conditions.
Now you're working to establish that this property has classification D soils, isn't that correct?
Yes, we've already demonstrated that.
And D soils, and forgive me, it's a bit of a naive question. That means it doesn't percolate very well. The water doesn't seep into it very well.
Well, the D soils, as we discussed earlier, are reclassified based on the depth of groundwater. The groundwater recharge, which is another aspect of stormwater management, in order to support groundwater recharge, you need satisfactorily permeable soils. And as I've said, our permeability tests that we've done on site, the basin flood tests, with all 13 not passing, demonstrate that we do have poor permeability as well.
Okay.
For certain soils. Yeah.
So to use your incredible analogy of a bottle of water, when we're talking about millions of gallons. But anyway, this bottle of water that you pour out on land that doesn't infiltrate.
Today.
Doesn't infiltrate. Does it matter how quickly you pour it out? Is if you pour it fast and where you pour it slow, it still doesn't infiltrate into the ground.
I don't really feel you understand the engineering that I'm trying to describe, but in the post conditions, so that if the groundwater, if the existing conditions have poor permeability soils, that affects the runoff in the existing conditions too. So
sure,
there's poor runoff from the site.
But you're increasing the volume. That's what I'm saying. You're talking about how this is great. We're reducing the peak.
No, I'm not really
flow.
using the word great, sir. I'm just using the words compliance and demonstrating in accordance with the regs, the required stormwater management facilities.
You don't think it's so great?
No, I don't believe that that's really an engineering issue. That I think it's good on the behalf of the applicant when I discuss with him my recommendation that we don't wait for reg changes, that we do the design now in early 2023 for some pending regs that we're aware of that and provide enhanced stormwater management. I think that's a good response to direct me to do so. Well, even if it meant, a smaller building, a bigger detention basin, additional construction costs from a stormwater management standpoint.
Well, I certainly hope you consider that for all the applications that you're working on.
Actually, sir, I do.
Great. I guess the point that I'm trying to understand is just because you reduce the peak flow in a condition where there's a large rain event and lots of water needing to be moved off of soils that don't percolate very well, does the reduction of the peak flow matter that much, or is it really just the total volume that really matters in terms of flooding?
No, I believe it's really not what I believe. It's what the regulations believe. If the regulations required some reduction in volume, we would have to design to that, sir. The regulations address reductions in peak flow, and that's what we've complied with. And sorry, they don't understand or accept that.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
My next witness is Ahad Arif. We just have some brief testimony regarding the proposed tenant. We've submitted an operations memorandum dated February 16th, 2023, greater than 10 days prior to the hearing. And we'd ask him to be sworn in.
Ahad Arif, A-R-I-F.
Thank you, Mr. Arif. Could you tell the board a little bit about yourself, where you were born, when you came to the country, and describe your role at Miracle Brands?
Sure. I came into the country around 1993, 1994. I was about 5 years old. I was born in Pakistan, and in 2019, I launched Miracle Brand, which is an online store that sells bed sheets and towels.
So, describe to us your main customers.
Our target audience is all online consumers. It's mainly people that are based in America. They all come to our website. They purchase bed sheets and towels, and then we ship directly to them via UPS, USPS, DHL, these carriers.
And are the textiles that you're importing completely put together, or is there any manufacturing proposed at the current location?
There is no manufacturing at the current location. Everything is finished goods. They come from Pakistan, they come from India in a container, and then they get unloaded here, broken down, and as consumers buy them, they ship out directly to the consumers.
Are there any manufacturing uses proposed for this site?
There is no manufacturing. All of our goods are completely finished before they arrive.
And how do you ship the finished goods out?
We put them in smaller cartons and we ship them out via UPS, FedEx, DHL, and then they distribute it to each of the customers.
Could you describe your current operations?
Yes. So currently we are in a 3PL warehouse that is about 140,000 square feet. It's a 3PL warehouse is a shared space where there's other companies as well too. And the orders flow into that. And our service provider, our 3PL, services all of our goods, and they ship out they pick and pack all of our goods and they ship them out.
And could you describe the growth of your company since its formation in 2019?
Sure. So in 2019, when we launched, in 2019 was the first year we launched, and in 2020 we had almost 2,900% growth. 2021 we grew tremendously as well, to almost a 50% growth. 2022 was another 70% growth, and we expect 2023 to be about 100% growth. So we've had some rapid growth thanks to the help of our team and our product.
And so why did you choose New Jersey to locate this distribution point?
I'm located, I live in Franklin Park. This would be an ideal location for me. This would be about a 15 to 20 minute drive. It would be great for me to be right near my product, right next to my product, have employees here, create jobs, create opportunities, and really have a lot more control rather than using a shared space. I also think that this is a great opportunity for me to grow into other fields such as wholesale distribution. Right now we're only doing online, and we have an opportunity to grow with wholesale, and we are growing tremendously, and we continue to grow over the next couple of years as well.
And there's no anticipated retail sales from this location?
There are no retail sales from this location.
How many employees do you currently have?
I have about 60 to 65 employees right now. Some of them are contractors, so part-time. But yeah, we have about 60 to 65.
And how many parking spaces does your current employees utilize?
The current location utilizes about 90 parking spaces.
And how many loading bays are you currently utilizing?
About 13 loading bays.
Do you feel that the parking is adequate for your current and anticipated operations as proposed on this site?
In this site?
Yes.
Yes.
Could you describe the shipping, or I would just say the importing of the textiles? How do they arrive? How many trucks a day go in and out?
So we have all of our product comes from overseas. It's finished goods. They come they come floor loaded containers in cartons, in like a 40-foot container. Each container can have anywhere between 2,000 to 4,000 cartons, all floor loaded. So it does require a lot of manual labor just to kind of, and a lot of hours to unload all of those containers. And we anticipate anywhere between 4 to 10 containers on a daily basis coming in. Oftentimes, the containers will just be staged there because we can't live unload all at the same time. It does take a couple of hours to unload just one container. So having multiple containers there, it's not going to be a lot of traffic. It's more related to just staging.
And is it correct that there's no proposal for outdoor storage? All
Yes.
items would be enclosed in the building and there will be no hazardous chemicals or materials?
Yes, correct. No hazardous chemical or materials, and there will be no outside storage.
Could you describe your typical hours of operation currently and what's proposed on this site?
Currently, it's about 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on weekends, it's about 9 to 5 p.m., which would probably be a bit similar as well too. During peak times, the hours could change. It just depends on the overall business, but it would probably be around 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. in the weekdays.
And could you describe an anticipated truck traffic over the course of the day? You had said 4 to 10 trucks inbound. What about outbound?
Outbound could be probably around 6 to 10 trucks, and those are orders that are going out.
I have no further questions for the witness.
Oh, Mr. A.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that everything that the applicant talked about in terms of traffic is reflective in the testimony for the traffic engineer. It's very critical that that is done. I know we have an open traffic letters that have to be addressed that I believe that the applicant is going to provide their traffic engineer. I think from the testimony that I've heard, I'm just hoping that that is going to be translated into traffic testimony. So I just want to make sure that the board is aware of that, but I have no objections and no questions of this witness.
Okay. Ms. Boyce?
Additionally, I have no questions at this time, but I want to emphasize, I want to make sure that the testimony that's provided is consistent with what's been provided previously to support in terms of what's being proposed for the use.
I have, unless the board has, I have a number of questions. I'll let the board have their crack first.
Okay.
Can we go ahead?
I'll go first. So, thank you for coming in and for shedding some light. So on the outbound, is it going in the smaller UPS DHL box trucks, or actually they're larger tractor trailers that they'll take to their regional centers?
These are larger tractor trailers, usually 53 foot. They go in, they're smaller boxes. They go in a lot of pallets. They go in these larger trucks, and then they go into their regional centers for last mile delivery.
So it's not a bunch of little trucks
No.
coming, it's just a whole truck up.
It's just
and
a
then
full truck.
And then they go out and disperse it, okay?
Correct.
That was first thing. Second thing, there are nothing done outside the building. Everything is done inside the building. So therefore, the trucks back up to the bays, and all the, I'll just say, activity is within the building, right? Nothing outside than the trucks themselves.
Yes, correct. Everything is outside. I'm sorry, everything is inside the building.
Right. So there's no outside loading. Okay.
Correct.
When the trucks are dropped off, are they unhooked and the tractors leave, or do the tractor trailers stay as a unit?
Usually they will be just dropped off for a day or two, just to provide some enough time for unloading those containers, because it does require a decent amount of manual labor. It takes a couple of hours to unload one container.
So my point is, like, the tractor trailer will come in, unhook, and then just the tractor leaves, and then we'll come back another day to pick up the empty trailer, so to speak, or?
Yes, usually they drop off another container and they pick up the old one.
So they'll switch.
They'll switch it.
So one comes in, one goes out almost.
Correct.
Okay. Now you talked about the hours of operation till, what is your peak times that you might, quote unquote, need extended hours?
Probably, again, it's tough to say. I'm not exactly sure, but probably 12 a.m. maybe, but very unlikely.
Like during the holiday seasons, like where would be your peak window?
It's usually Q4, so like November time or December time.
Okay.
Before the holiday seasons, because usually the peak sales are up until like December 15th.
Okay. And your shifts are 3 shifts a day, 2 shifts? How do the staff come in?
I don't know yet. I haven't it's still going to take a couple of years to try to figure that out, but it would probably be multiple shifts, maybe
So
two.
right
maybe
now,
three.
do you have one shift that people are working or two shifts?
Right now, it's a 3PL warehouse, so I don't have control over this, but they have 2 shifts.
Okay. That's all for now.
So just along the same lines, so the people that you have, or that you will have going forward, would you expect that only the sort of internal employees would be working late into the evening, or do you expect to have truck deliveries both inbound and outbound all the way up till, in the evening, 10 or midnight if need be? Or is that mostly just your internal people doing the staging for delivery when the trucks arrive during the normal course of the day?
Usually, ports are closed and you really can't pick up after hours. So I anticipate most trucks to arrive within, the 9 to 5, 9 to 6. I can't say maybe there's traffic. There might be, some delays that a truck arrives a little bit later than that. But most of the hours, the later hours, will probably be happening inside the warehouse.
Okay, so that's your internal
Internal,
staging.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, I guess my turn. So where are you physically located?
Right now, do you mean the company?
The company and also your fulfillment center that you use?
Right now, the fulfillment center is located in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay. And the company's headquartered?
The company's in New Jersey, in Franklin Park.
Franklin, not Jersey City?
We have an office. We have a mailing address in Jersey City. Yeah.
Okay. And as far as the product offering, is it on? Okay. As far as the product offering, are you going to still be offering laundry detergent sheets?
We will still be offering laundry detergent
That would
sheets.
be out of this location?
That would be out of this location, yes.
Okay. And how's that produced, or where is that produced?
That is produced mainly in China. It's a small subset, probably about 2% of our business, not even, maybe 1%. That is a product that is, it's not liquid. It's actually just a sheet, like a dryer sheet. And it's not hazardous either.
Okay. All right. And I was just going to go, I don't know if it was asked before, but as far as any of the trucks that you'll have, would you be staging them on site and have them filled? Like acting as, I guess, as an extra, storage to have them? Or are they going to be kept empty?
The plan is not to use any trucks as storage.
Okay. So you contract all your trucks?
Yes.
Okay. And none of them will be staying overnight on site?
There may be some that could stay overnight as staging for, if it might be locked, but they haven't been unloaded yet. But those are not trucks owned by us.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah, Mr. Bernstein.
Mr. Arif, can you indicate to the board exactly how the operations of your company are currently being handled in Florida?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
How are your operations? You indicated you're in a 3PL facility. How large is the facility?
The current facility is about 140,000 square feet.
And you're sharing it with how many other businesses?
I don't know the exact number.
So you don't have the full array of the 140,000 square feet, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You have any idea how large your operations are within that 140,000 square foot warehouse?
We have a couple thousand pallets. I don't know the exact number, but I can get back to you.
How many loading docks in the current facility?
The current facility, I believe, has around 13.
13?
Yes.
And how many are being proposed for the facility you're looking into?
What do we have exactly? The number? I don't know the exact number. 15. You know what? It's 20.
Based on your representations to questioning from members of the board, correct me if I'm wrong, the proposal you're suggesting, well, let me go back. Currently, at your facility, how many trucks are stored on a daily basis?
At the current facility?
At the current
That
facility.
is my trucks, or, I mean, that are related to my
The
product?
trucks that are servicing your business.
The trucks that are servicing my business could be, it just depends, anywhere between 5 to 6. Some days it's lower than that, some days it's more than that.
Approximately how many loading docks in a given day are your facilities using at the current site?
Again, it could be around 5 to 6, maybe sometimes. Some days it's lower, some days it's higher.
And the basis for seeking a warehouse with a number of loading docks at least 3 times the size based on your truck traffic is what?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Your truck traffic, according to your testimony, was somewhere, correct me, about 4 to 6 inbound.
Yes, 4 to 6.
And 6 to 10 outbound.
Correct.
What requires then 18 loading docks for traffic of that nature?
Well, we are a growing company, and we do anticipate to have further growth, and we do have a lot of wholesale opportunity that we do anticipate in the next couple of years.
Mr. Reef, you're currently in a 25,000 square foot facility that you're using of the 140,000, correct? Even with the growth that you've indicated over the last 4 years, have you needed more square footage in the current facility you have down in Jacksonville?
Yes.
How much more?
I don't know the exact number. I can get back to you.
You indicate that your offices are currently located in Franklin Park, is that correct?
That's where my office is, yes.
Have you sought or looked at any of the multitude of warehouses that currently exist in Franklin Park and all over Somerset?
This was the opportunity that came to us. And this is
Mr. Ogrodnik, I'd appreciate if you not shake your head up and
don't think that's an appropriate question.
whether you think it's an appropriate question or not.
Well,
is
I can instruct
immaterial.
my client not to answer it too. So,
And I'll suggest that his failure to answer will be taken at the appropriate reason for the appropriate time. I'm asking. Okay, I'll ask the following question: what led you to believe that a site further away from your current location was more suitable than the ones closer that are currently empty?
Well, this would be pretty much a lot more under our control. This is close to our house. This is close to my house. It's only a 15-minute drive. It's not that far.
Are you going to be the owner of this building or a tenant?
I would be both.
I'll bite. How do you explain you're both?
If it was to be approved, I am a part of the application as well.
So you are a part owner of this proposed application?
Correct.
How much of an owner?
33%.
Is that listed anywhere on the application?
I mean, just as many businesses, there's.
I'm asking a question. I asked a simple question, Mr. Ogrodnik. Is it listed on the application?
I don't know the answer to that. You'd have to check the application. We've listed.
I'm
complied with.
I'm asking Mr. Ogrodnik, don't parse with me. I'm asking your client a question. If he knows the answer, whether it's on the application or not, he can answer it. Don't
I'm not
parse
sure.
with me about whether or not how many businesses are involved, because I can almost guarantee you he's not listed on the application. And I suspect it's the first time that anybody has heard that he's a part owner of this proposed building. Is that the reason why you're seeking to locate in Hillsborough, is because you will be a part owner of this building?
It allows more control, correct?
You have no idea at this time the hours of operation you're actually seeking, are you?
No, not
have
exactly.
You have no idea how many employees you will need for the operation that you have not determined yet what the hours are, correct?
Correct.
You have no idea how many shifts will exist, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, for this operation.
We don't know because this application is, if it goes through, it would take many years, a couple of years actually, to actually build. So my goal is to kind of focus on the growth of the business and, anticipate for future.
Mr. Arif, you indicated in your direct testimony from Mr. Ogrodnik that you had at least double-digit growth year over year over the last 3 years.
Yes.
In fact, I think one year it was 2000s plus or
Yeah, from the
minus.
first year to the second year.
Can you indicate what that really translates to in terms of dollars?
I would not want to do that. That's a bit confidential in terms of my business.
I'm sorry. I can kind of understand. It's a private business.
Yeah.
I'm trying to ask, I'll throw the question, Mr. Delcor. What are your current hours of shifts in Florida?
It's about 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
How many days a week?
6 days a week.
Monday through Saturday, correct?
Correct.
When is the earliest time a truck currently delivers to your shared site?
Usually by 9 a.m.
And the last truck that leaves?
Usually by 4 p.m.
4 a.m.?
4 p.m.
Thank you. Have you done an analysis as part of your business plan as to where these trucks are going to go when they leave the site in terms of travel, if you know?
I believe that would be for traffic.
So the plan has no terms of, okay, thank you. I don't recall, I apologize if you've answered this before. How many employees are currently working in Florida?
In my current company?
Yeah.
We have about 55 to 65 people.
How many of them are full-time? How many of them are seasonal?
About 45 are about full-time.
And full-time is how many?
Like 40 hours a week.
Okay. I have no further questions at this time.
Okay. Any others from the dais? Because I just have one more to follow up. Are you involved in any other business ventures at this point?
Any other business ventures?
Mm-hmm. Besides Miracle Brand?
Yes, I have other business ventures as well too.
Okay, is there a possibility any of them may move to this site since it appears to be excess capacity at this point?
No.
Are they being handled by third-party logistics?
No,
or how are you?
They're not really related to online e-commerce stuff.
Okay, not direct to consumer?
No.
Okay. Nameless Ventures is not direct to consumer?
Nameless Ventures owns Miracle. That's the only company we had. Our plan was to launch other e-commerce brands, but since this has been growing tremendously, we've just focused on this.
Okay. Okay. Do I need to, or are we already open to public, or we got to do? Okay, ma'am, motion to open to public. What? Oh, that's right. I forgot you guys. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I know, they're being very quiet, thank you.
Trying. Mr. Arif, my name is Mike Sinkovich. I represent one of the attorneys that represents Hearthstone. Mr. Bernstein captured a good deal of my questions, but I'm going to follow up and try not to repeat. You testified a moment ago that you're a 33% owner of Miracle Brand. Is that correct?
Correct. 33% of This application I meant.
Oh, the Weston Road
Weston
LLC.
Road. Yes.
And you're also an owner of Miracle
Yes.
Brand. And what's your percentage there?
It's 33% as well.
And how many other owners are there?
Two other.
And are they the same for both Weston Road
No.
LLC?
No.
Okay. Could you explain who the owners are of Weston Road LLC? And then I'll ask the same question about Miracle Brand.
The owners are different from both of them. Do you need, should I give the names?
I'm going to object to any questions.
Yeah.
Again, the ownership makeup, the applicant's required to disclose owners on behalf of the applicant with 10% or greater interest, and we've complied with that statute.
Is there currently a lease in place between Weston Road LLC and Miracle Brand?
No.
Do you envision there will be one if this is approved?
Yes.
Has there been any discussions, I guess, between yourself about the lease and what the terms would be?
Possibly. I mean, we've discussed a few things, but a lot of it just depends on where this goes. Like, we didn't want to continue conversations if it depends on where this goes.
Did you discuss a term at all?
No.
Okay. As has been asked of you before, but I'll ask again, do you anticipate needing all, I guess, 130,000 square feet of the warehouse at the outset?
Yes.
So you do not plan on subleasing or leasing to any other companies?
No.
You currently have, I believe you testified, between 55 and 65 employees. Is that correct?
Correct.
How many work at one time?
How many work at one time?
Yeah, like how many shifts are there and how many are physically working at the same time, approximately?
Keep in mind that, like, these 55 employees, they're like, a lot of them are staff that are, more admin staff related rather than operations related. But all 45 plus, I believe, work at the same time.
Throughout the entire day?
Throughout the entire day.
And you alluded to my second question, or your answer was almost what my next question was going to be, which is, of those, I'm not sure what the number is, I've heard 45, 55, 65, but of those people, what do they do? I mean, if you can give me general categories of...
Yeah, we have, we have a marketing team. We have a marketing team. We have an ops team. We have customer service. And then we have management as well, too. And then we have content creations.
And all of those people are working at the current warehouse?
No. Pretty much everybody. The current warehouse is a 3PL warehouse. So none of those employees are ours.
Right. Okay, so maybe I wasn't clear. I guess I'm asking what the current warehouse, how many employees do you have working at the current warehouse? Or how many
None of them
people
are my employees at the current warehouse.
How many people are working for, let me rephrase that. How many people at the current warehouse are doing work for Miracle Brand?
I can't answer that. I don't know exactly how many people are working at the warehouse because I'm not there. They have about 55 plus employees, I believe. So they have people that work for my stuff. They have people that work for other companies as well.
In the application materials, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it says you anticipate 55 employees if this warehouse is improved? Oh.
Yeah, again, subject to change, not sure exactly.
Could you explain in general terms what those 55 people would be doing at the proposed facility?
I don't know the exact number of employees, but, I would have a warehouse manager who would kind of run everything. There would be staff there as well, too. That's admin staff, people in inbounds, people working in outbounds, pick packs, storage. I don't know how the overall structure would be right now.
Do you know how you arrived at your projection of 55 employees in this application?
I just worked with someone to try to help understand it.
Someone like a consultant,
Yes.
business consultant? I guess part of my other confusion with the current warehouse is, I believe you stated that there's approximately 90 parking spaces there,
Yes.
but you don't know how many of those spaces are being utilized by people that are directly doing work for Miracle Brand. Is that correct?
Correct.
So how did you arrive at the amount of parking spaces that are proposed in this application, which I believe is 99?
I mean,
I think that's an engineering question.
yeah.
So you're not sure. It would defer to the professional.
Yes.
How do you envision the company growing over time? Maybe the next few years. Do you, well, rather than me project, what do you think?
Right now, we're only selling online. We do anticipate selling to more big box retailers, and that just requires a lot more space, a lot more facility, a lot more storage as well too. That's our next phase of growth, to try to focus on more big box retailers and also international expansion as well too, and to be able to service, because right now we only service, majority of our customers are in America, North America, and mainly just US and Canada. We would like to ship out to customers in international places as well too, and big box retailers.
Based on that projection or that goal, how long do you envision utilizing UPS and USPS like you do now for ingoing and outgoing shipments? Is that something that you expect to do for years, or is there a point where you think that's going to change?
We believe that's going to be going on for years. We don't anticipate any changes to that.
Okay. I believe you testified earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in your current operation, there's no trucks that are just parked overnight outside. Like, there may be some that are waiting for the bays to get unlocked, but other than that, there's no outdoor parking. Is that correct?
We right now don't have any. We have containers that are parked, but the actual truck right now is not parked. They just dock and then they leave.
And the containers, I'm new to this.
Yeah.
The containers, where are they parked? Are they parked in the bays or are they parked somewhere else?
Sometimes they're parked at the bays. Sometimes they're parked right outside. If it's unloaded and there's not enough bays, docks, then you end up moving it to a different location.
So that's the reason why, correct me if I'm wrong, that you have proposed bays and truck
Yes.
spaces. So how do containers, or whatever the proper term is, that are in a space then get moved to a bay once it frees up?
Usually, usually a truck comes, ties it back up, and moves it to a different area. You could hire a truck to kind of do that, move it from one bay to another bay.
Okay, but you don't have your own trucks?
No.
When would you anticipate getting your own trucks?
If it requires, maybe, but I don't believe. I don't know yet. I don't know.
Okay.
Can't answer that.
Okay. And if it did require, I would assume you would plan on leaving those trucks on site when they're not being used, correct?
Again, I'm not sure if we're going to keep any trucks. You could also hire a company to just do it, and then they do it. They leave off hours.
Going back to the containers, when they're parked in a truck spot, are they filled with goods usually?
They could be, but you prefer not to do that. but usually they could be. But yeah, I mean, you prefer not to do that.
Why? Just out of curiosity, why?
I mean, you want to kind of have it in your loading dock. Usually it's locked up, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Okay. But you want to try to unload as fast as possible. The goal is to unload as fast as possible. If you don't unload within a couple of days, you get charged by the port every single day for holding that container.
Ah, okay. Okay. So you don't want to store goods outside for too long.
Yeah, you don't even want to store a container outside for too long.
Okay. Just a few days would be the max.
Yes.
Okay. Do you project at this point that Miracle Brand would ever outgrow this space if this was approved?
It's really tough to say. I mean, of course, there's always a possibility. I mean, it would be amazing if it could. You know, there's always a possibility, but I just don't know yet.
Backtracking just a little bit, and I'll be brief. Your office is currently in Franklin Park?
Yes.
And how many employees do you have there now?
Right. I mean, everybody right now is currently remote.
Okay. Well, how many remote employees do you have, approximately?
About the 55 that I mentioned. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's remote.
Okay. And do you anticipate all of those individuals will come to Hillsborough if the application's approved?
Some may, some will continue to stay remote.
Okay. And I may have covered this, and I apologize if I did. Is there an office space in the Jacksonville warehouse that you utilize?
No. The 3PL does have an office there, though.
Right.
But we do not have an office there.
I don't believe I have any further questions. Thank you.
It's a third-party logistics. It's a service provider to help you, you know, with all of your order volume, inbound and outbound.
Yep.
Can I ask one further question? So all this stuff, I'm assuming these containers come in via ship?
Yes.
So how often does the ship come in? So like obviously when the ship comes in, you're getting these containers maybe 4 or 5 or 6, right? And then ship may not come in again for another 2 weeks or a month or?
No, there's ships coming every single day.
So you have constant?
Because there's constant inflow and there's constant outflow.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, a related question?
No, go ahead, because we have about 5 minutes.
So your current operations are in Jacksonville, and you're going to cease operations there. Is that correct?
There would be a transition to move out.
Okay, and I'm assuming that the containers are going to come from Newark.
Yes, Elizabeth Port usually.
All right, and there's a specific route from Newark to this facility.
Yes.
Your logistics have mapped that out.
I believe traffic may have done that.
All right, I just wanted to confirm. Thanks.
Okay. I know we have about 5 minutes. Might be enough for a couple of, all right, so may I have a motion to open to public?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. If there is anyone who's not represented by any attorneys here, can come up and ask the applicant, owner, any questions on his testimony. Please state your name and address for the record first.
Grant Colmer. Hello.
Yeah.
Grant Colmer, 144 Taylor Avenue. I'm not represented by any parties here. There are 3 owners that are listed on the application. I didn't get your first name. I apologize.
Ahad.
And Mohammed
Yes.
would be a partner
Yes.
within the western, and then I have a third name that's listed. So
Yes.
you are listed. That's there.
Right.
With this application, would you agree or fair to say that both you have a vested interest in Miracle Brands as a product and growing in a space and a warehouse brand, and as a company, but also as an owner then of a warehouse that you could perhaps use as a lease out for space? Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yes, and also the three other people invested interest in this.
Two other people.
Two other people,
Yes.
besides three in total. Okay, thank you. Would it also be fair to say that with an increased growth, you projected 100% growth in 2023? Awesome, that's amazing to hear. And if proposed, and you have a space as say 35 square feet you're proposing here, would that come with increased traffic over time or trucks over time if you have increased growth? So right now you're projecting 4 to 6 containers, 4 to 10 incoming containers, and 6 to 8 trucks bounds per day. If you grow, would that truck increase?
That calculation is with the growth that we anticipate. So
It's fair to say with growth, more increase of traffic and employees.
possibly, but I think
Or
there's
no?
a limitation with the total square footage of the warehouse too.
Okay, are you aware of how many employees work in a typical 135 square foot warehouse?
Not necessarily, not exactly. I don't know. It depends on what's going on inside the warehouse.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Brian Tarantino, Fairfield Lane. So you said that you would expect 4 to 10 containers a day coming in. Would those same trucks be used for outbound, or would it be a different trucks?
It would be different trucks.
Okay. So let's just say, and you're saying that 4 to 10 represents the 100% growth that you mentioned.
It represents future growth.
Okay.
Yes.
Future growth for when?
It could be a couple of years from now, like
Okay.
when this project would be completed.
Okay. So you're saying that, let's just say 10
Yeah.
coming in. So that's 10 trips. The cabs would leave, as you said, they would drop the truck and leave. So that's 20. Then you need to remove those empty. So that's another 10 of cabs coming in. That's 30.
Is this a question?
I just want to confirm the numbers that we're talking about here. And then those empty trucks have to be removed. So that's another 10 trips. That's 40 in a day. And that's for the inbound. Is that right?
I think this would be a better question for traffic.
No, you testified to the usage of the building and how many trucks were being used in the building. Traffic is...
We already testified as to the anticipated trips, and we have a traffic expert who will address in further detail at our next hearing.
Yeah, that's great. I just want...
So we're not going to answer that question.
It pertains to the usage of the building and exactly how the trucks are going to be moved around and used. That's the question.
Mr. Tarantino, I think the answer you're getting is that the witness cannot advise you one way or the other on that amount, and he's relying on his traffic engineer to testify as the same. Is that correct, Mr. Ogrodnik?
Well, we also have Jim Scott, who is our logistics consultant, and we will make him available to answer questions at a future hearing.
So the answer is those gentlemen will address those issues?
Okay.
Mr. Scott and Mr. Dean will adequately respond to these trip generation questions.
Okay, and you did say that outbound is 6 to 10 trucks a day. Is that right?
Yes, I did say that.
Okay, and again, they have to be loaded, so you're talking about the trucks have to come in, the cabs go away, come back once they're loaded and take them away. Is that right?
I would let traffic answer this.
No, it's not a traffic question, it's logistics, like how the facility is being run.
Again, I would just let traffic answer this.
Okay. So the trucks are going to be coming from Elizabeth. Do you know what highways? Is that a traffic question? I guess we should ask traffic.
Yes.
Okay. How much trouble is it going to be for you to relocate from Jacksonville to Hillsborough?
When you mean trouble, like it's not super difficult. I mean, it is. It does require some work, but yeah, I don't think it's going to be a huge difficulty.
Okay. So is it fair to say that, likewise, if you ran out of space, it wouldn't be that difficult for you to relocate to some other place? You occupied Weston and then said, gee, we're out of space because we've got fantastic growth. You got great plans. It wouldn't be that much trouble to relocate to another place.
Again, yeah, it just depends on the growth.
Yeah, yes, but
I'm not sure.
Since it's not that hard to move in, it wouldn't be that hard to move out, is what I'm asking.
Again, it just depends. Like, yeah, I mean, I guess I can't answer that question because I don't know the overall anticipated growth of the company.
No, but if you did need to move out, you wouldn't be that hard to move out, is what I'm asking.
It's still hard. Yeah.
I understand what we're asking. We got guys here for operations. Can we? I mean,
that's it.
What we're trying to do here. I really don't. This is ridiculous. The line of questioning we have for this guy.
Well, in all due respect, it speaks to.
Respect. Have a little respect.
I'm not sure how I'm not being respectful, Mr.
All right, we're pretty much out of time, but let's just say it's safe. He hasn't experienced a move yet, so I don't think he's going to be in position to talk about leaving a place he hasn't moved in. So,
well, it really speaks to the reason I'm asking. Just so you know, it speaks to the likelihood that that we wouldn't be able to rely simply on the usage that that the current.
So you could save. Okay.
Of course it would.
All right. Let's. I would suggest save that at the end of the testimony. All testimony. You can bring that up as a final comment or a concern, but I don't think it's a question for this particular witness. I mean, I know where you're going, but I think that's something you're best to save at the end to state that concern.
Okay. Well,
it sounds like it's a concern, not an operations question.
It speaks to.
It doesn't speak. He's testifying on operations.
Okay. Sounds like I should stop. I have additional questions, but.
Well, if they're operational related, I mean.
I do have other operational questions, but I'm not feeling like it's okay to ask. So.
Well, you
I'll
haven't.
I'll wait till next time, and we're over time.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Is there anyone else from the public that? Because we're out of time right now. So if there's hands up. I would expect, Mr. Ogrodnik, your witness would be available at the next hearing.
We'd like to finish tonight.
We don't go into overtime. I'm not setting any precedents.
It looks like there's one more question.
And there may be another after that. When I'm not setting precedents.
Who's left?
We said no new testimony.
We have how many more? How many people have questions left?
Okay.
All right. Well,
No,
Brian, you're already up.
You're already.
You sat down. So.
All right. Mr. Ogrodnik, your witness will be available to finish public testimony because I'm not going to set precedents that's going to impact future applications. We've always had a 10 o'clock as our hard stop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
That's acceptable.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Okay. So with that, we've come to an end. Just want to remind the board, we do have a meeting next week, May 11th at 7 p.m. I don't, but also we need to talk about, I don't know, we're going to find that too.
279, Homestead 279. I know, but did you email?
Okay.
So the 279 Homestead application is scheduled for next week. We would ask this applicant be carried to the meeting next week. 279 Homestead is being redesigned after comments from the board and objector to relocate the loading bays towards the industrial away from the objecting neighbor. So we would ask that we continue on with Mr. Arif.
Do we have enough time to notice
It can be carried without notice.
No, but I'm saying for the public meeting, don't we need to state the agenda?
Mr. O'Groding's been advised he's going to have to come back next week and make the application to carry the Homestead 279 application.
Right.
What he's indicating to you is he doesn't expect that's going to take long, and I would concur with that.
Right.
So therefore, he is asking you to carry this application till next week without further notice, assuming objector's counsel is available.
All right. Looking at their Google calendars.
I guess I want to raise one issue about that. Obviously, next Thursday is less than 10 days from today. We have additional experts that have not submitted reports yet, and we won't be able to get them in 10 days before. I don't envision a scenario where our witnesses are going to be testifying next Thursday, but
What would you have done if we finished today?
we had one report done. We have one of our witnesses here, plus we have members of our community that were going to testify as well. So we would have been ready. But we assumed, based on the agenda that was published, that May 11th would not be an option for us since there was another application. So I just want to reserve our right that in some crazy scenario that the applicant finishes and our one witness that already provided a report finishes, that we're not forced to, I guess, give up our other witnesses who haven't put reports in 10 days before.
Mr. Chairman, this matter has also been previously designated for June 1st
Okay.
on the calendar.
Okay. So, right. Yep. So be prepared for June 1st also then.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we need
A motion to continue the application without further notice to 7 p.m. Thursday, May 11th, or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard without further notice for this application. And
Thank you.
Mr. Arif will be start.
Okay. So may I have a motion to carry till next week?
So, second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Beason?
Yes.
Mr. Delcor? Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
Mr. Radowitz?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Committeeman Shirley?
Yes.
Mayor LaPlante?
Yes.
Vice Chair Julian?
Yes.
Chair Sarachi?
Yes. So just again, reminding everyone, we're going to continue this next week on May 11th, but also mark your calendars. June 1st is also this application's on that docket too. So with that, Mr. Coyce, as long as there's nothing else that you want to, I will entertain a motion of adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. We are adjourned. See everyone next week.